Well, let's talk about this now with Mark Reckless, a Tory MP who sits on the Home Affairs Select Committee, and with Tony McNulty, who was Labour Police Minister under Tony Blair. You were there today. What was the reaction?
People were stunned. I mean, I thought she was magnificent, but I think a lot of people there was just a stunned silence, and it would have been so easy for her to paper over the cracks, to massage people's egos, to tell them it was for the Federation to choose whether to reform. But instead, she, I felt, gave an incredibly powerful and passionate performance and just stuck to what she believed in and did everything possible to drive that through. And earlier on in the day, I spoke to one of the key reformers who was really worried that actually the motion was going to be watered down, they'd vote down some of the things and they wouldn't get the reform they wanted. And for her to give such a powerful speech making the case for change, I thought was hugely impressive.
Did you ever try to reform the Police Federation when you were there, Tony McNulty?
We worked alongside them. You'll remember 26,000 of them marched outside the new Home Office because we docked some of their pay as part of the round of pay settlements. I would disagree with Mark's analysis. I think she was unduly gratuitous. She was almost going for the person rather than the ball. She could have done, I agree in substance with most things she said, and God, they need to reform. I told the Constables Committee that when I met them fairly recently. They know that. They get that.
But you thought she was playing politics?
I thought it had as much to do with tomorrow and a post-2015 Mr Cameron off on his bike environment, which is unnecessary given the seriousness with which they need to reform. Someone said to me today she almost pulled defeat from the jaws of victory. And that someone who was their senior Fed person said to me they thought it was as much about revenge as reform, which is unnecessary because they get the notion of reform. They seriously do. Even the most recalcitrant. I've been to some of these some of their conferences in the past where it really felt like you got the train and the next stop was the 1970s. You got out and went into the Fed conference. And I've told them that. I did a blog post with the constables and said, you cannot be as thuggish as you've been in the past and expect any sort of respect from people. But she went overboard. I think there was too much politics there.
Yeah, there was a lot of politics there, wasn't there?
I think there were politics there, but they weren't perhaps the politics people expected. When you heard her as a Conservative Home Secretary list this litany of things that had gone wrong with the police and say, rather than a few bad apples, no, this is more serious. And when she said only 42% of black Caribbean people trust the police, that is unacceptable. That's why we have to change. What she's doing with Stop and Search, many people would have thought, well, you know, why bother? I mean, Labour didn't for 13 years, yet she's taken hold of that. She's taking a lot of political risks, actually, because she believes it's the right thing to do. And when you look at that conference and you see there's very few young officers, very few women, hardly any ethnic minorities, not many graduates, and she actually says we need a police force that's representative of the people they serve, and she's actually taking political risks to do that. And I was, you know, I've criticised Theresa May on some issues in the past, but I was proud to have her as our Home Secretary sitting at that board today.
I think that's part serious, part pantomime. As I say, I'm in this perplexed position where much of what she said in substance I agree with, but the pantomime was utterly unnecessary. She
had to threaten them. Look at this organisation.
No,
look at the state it's got to. You know better than most.
I spoke to key figures in the constables only over the last couple of weeks, and they get Normanton. They know that all 36 elements of Normanton has to go through.
This is the Normanton report as to how they should be changed.
That, by the by, the Fed instigated. You'd have thought that she did the way she was talking. Yes, of course.
Look at the state they were in.
And they all know that it's way, way past last chance saloon and all that. But a little bit of what's the vision for police, for her vision for policing, a little bit of not the bad apple routine, but something that said to the people in the room, many of the catalogue of things I've just gone through about how appalling things have been in terms of policing are historic, and many in this room weren't even born.
But she gave that vision. When you heard her defend police and crime commissioners and just the passion and belief she put into that for the first time, actually, if the public don't like what's happening in police, they can elect someone who actually can change the budget, change the chief constable, change the strategy. And she said that's how we're going to get change in policing and get a police force that serves the public.
PCCs.
That cuts crime. Has got you
There's
said
a ballot box in Newport which wasn't troubled by anybody during the election. Nobody voted.
What about this question of public money? She mentions this £190,000. It's a token figure. But the fact is there are millions of pounds of taxpayers' money that go to pay the salaries of people who are doing nothing but looking after the interests of the Police Federation, which to all intents and purposes is a type of trade union.
But a lot of their members don't actually feel they're being looked after. And they've got
Do you think any public money should go to it?
Well, they've got all these committees for different ranks. They're not able to strike. I think they need to make savings so it costs less for the officers, so the public money doesn't have to go in as it has. So we don't need to have so much time of police officers spent with the Fed rather than out on the streets. But overall, I do think they need a federation. They're not allowed to strike. And the most important element of this is actually getting a federation that represents its members as well as the public interest.
Okay.
And I think now the Police Federation will take hold of this, deliver these reforms, and actually we are seeing the changes we need in policing. Crime is coming down, and the Home
Very
Secretary...
quickly.
My experience has been Fed members and reps up and down the country doing a fantastic job representing their members in the most mundane of circumstances throughout the industrial relations process. That must continue, but the reforms that David Normanton suggests must happen.
Crime is coming down, and there is the reform we need.
Right, thank you both very much.